Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Is Mario Cristobal the problem at Miami? I posed this question to the Miami fans on Saturday afternoon. I got a ton of feedback from you guys in the comment section. I had plenty of Miami fans reaching out via Twitter DMs as well to kind of give me their take. Sitting here Monday morning, got one cup of coffee in me. I'm ready to answer this question for myself. The answer is yes, right? Is Mario Cristobal the problem? Yes. Now, two things can be true. And we can give a ton of flowers to what Mario Cristobal has done building this roster. I don't think there's any Miami fan across the board here that is frustrated with how Mario Cristobal has run this program from a recruiting and roster building standpoint. They recruit the high school ranks really well. They've supplemented in the transfer portal very well. You can't argue. I feel this way. I felt this way in September. I still feel this way about this team right now. This is a roster that can compete with anybody in the sport. At one point in the season, it looked like a roster that was the best roster that we saw in the country. And so I don't mean to undersell that because that matters. I think many Miami fans who are listening to this episode, I see you guys riding with the recruiting all year long. Miami fans understand this sport is 12 months a year. And it matters what you do on the recruiting trail. You have to have the Jimmies and Joes. If you want to compete at the highest level of the sport, the Jimmies and Joes are a necessity. Mario Cristobal has that figured out. Now, on the flip side, I don't think this is a blimp on the radar. This is an alarming trend that we need to talk about. And that is this football team under Mario Cristobal being inconsistent, unreliable, and it feels like you're not getting the best every single week out of this roster. Now, I get that you're going to have bad games, right? Good teams figure out ways to win when they play bad, and Miami's done that at times in 2025. The biggest concern for me is the way this team seemingly falls apart in the month of November. And it's one thing to just like point out the record that you see with Miami in November. It's a whole nother thing to dive into. All right, well, what's going on? The best teams in the country, they get better as the season goes on. They start playing their best football when the moment's the biggest. Go look at Ohio State last year. Ohio State, it was we knew it was a very good roster. They weren't playing their best football in September and October, but they flipped the switch. They flipped the switch when it mattered the most. It's what all the teams that win national championships, they play better football as the season goes on. You look at Miami, and it seems to be the opposite. And I think that falls right on the feet of not only Mario Cristobal, but the entire coaching staff as well. Because when you start thinking about it, it's like, hey, as we play more games, as we get more film to evaluate, you would think that we're figuring out the problems that we have and we're fixing those problems and we're figuring out the things that we do well and we're leaning into those things. We're not seeing that with the Miami Hurricanes. You know, the same problems, even when Miami was winning back in September, we talked about there are still problems with this football team that they need to address. Pre-snap penalties, stale running game. Those problems were what lost Miami the football game against SMU on Saturday. Now, here's the big question that you need to answer, because this is like, hey, do you want to move on from Mario Cristobal, or do you want to let him try to figure this out? And this is the question you have to ask yourself: is can it get better? You know, Mario Cristobal has shown that he does a lot of really good things as a head coach. In-game coaching has always been a problem. And I'm sure there's going to be some Oregon fans that are listening to this episode, and they're going to let you hear it in the comment section too, saying we had the same problem with Mario Cristobal bad at Oregon. Can you fix that fundamental problem that Mario Cristobal seems to have? That's what I want to get into. Before we do, and as always, to the Miami fans, hey, we're sitting here Monday morning. We're about 48 hours removed. Would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. I want to say this too. The amount of support that this fan base has shown the boys, been amazing. Yeah, through the highs, and there's been plenty of highs over the last couple of weeks and through the lows. We appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into it. Now, want to know what's one of the more alarming problems that I am starting to see with this team, the core values that Mario Cristobal preaches not only to his team but to the fan base as well. That's what seems to be failing this team, right? When you look at when you think about Mario Cristobal as a head coach and you think about the things that he preaches, discipline, physicality, those are things that aren't prevalent with this football team right now. I mean, this is one of the most undisciplined football teams that you see in the country. And you can talk about what I think were some really bad calls that did not go Miami's way. I don't think there's a way to argue that that wasn't the case here. That doesn't expunge Miami from the fact that they are still one of the most penalized teams, not only in the ACC, but in the country. That was a problem back in September, and we talked about it. It is still a problem in November. The second part, physicality. I mean, how many times have we seen Miami 4th and 1, short yardage situation, say, we're going to lean on what we think is one of the best offensive lines in the country? And just we're going to lean into what we think we are, how we define our program. And that is the more physical program on the football field. Hasn't worked. In those big moments, Miami hasn't really been able to lean on their physicality to go out and win them football games. When you want to build your program on discipline and physicality, but we're not seeing that on the football field, man, that's a problem. The other problem, y'all know how I feel about this, is that winning killer instinct that a lot of national championship programs have. When it's time in the third quarter, even if you're not playing your best football, but when it's time in the third and fourth quarter to go put a football team away, we see the teams that win national championships go out and do that. We have consistently seen Miami fail to do that. We saw that, again, way back in September against Notre Dame. Now, we didn't talk much about that at the time because Miami won that game and we were excited about talking about the things that went well. Miami had a chance to run away with that game against Notre Dame, and they didn't. I'm looking at this game against SMU. You say the very similar thing. Number one, you had the opportunity to absolutely jump on them in the first half. Miami was by far the better football team in the first half of that game. They went into the locker room only up 3 points. Not good enough. And then in the second and fourth quarter, you had the ball with the lead driving, and you failed to get points. Those were all opportunities to kind of put that game on ice. And Miami just seems to lack that part of it. Now, here's the most important conversation here: is this a fixable thing for Mario Cristobal? Because this is the question that Miami fans are posed with now, and this is the kind of the question that we need to get answered. There's two ways you can look at it. There's one way, and that is we don't think Mario Cristobal can fit. And I'll be hand up and say I don't know if this is fixable. But there's two different ways you can look at it. One way is Mario Cristobal ain't got it, right? And I don't blame Miami fans for having that evaluation in terms of what we've seen, because that quite frankly is what Mario Cristobal has shown us. Now, the other way of thinking about it is, you're relating it back to a lot of other coaches. I think the best example, in my opinion, I think they're very similar coaches, Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. And y'all know I'm a Michigan fan, so I kind of went through this as a fan. Very similar situation where Jim Harbaugh consistently had really, really capable rosters, and they'd win a lot of football games, and they get to that Ohio State game, and they wouldn't be able to get it done. And there were a lot of Michigan fans, and I'll put my hand up and say, including myself, they were saying, well, Jim doesn't have it, right? And if you can't beat Ohio State at the end of the year, you can't achieve your goals. Number one, that's one of Michigan's biggest goals every year is beating Ohio State. But number two, when you lose to Ohio State, you ain't getting into the college football playoffs. You ain't getting into the Big Ten championship. So you couldn't get past that roadblock. You couldn't really achieve any other goals that you had for your season. They went through a lot of Jim Harbaugh at Michigan picked up a lot of battle scars, but eventually got over the hump. Is that something Mario Cristobal can do at Miami? The more you have these kind of situations, the more battle scars you pick up, eventually you start breaking through. I would like to think that. And the reason I would like to think that is I think there's a lot of things going well with Mario Cristobal, right? I mean, when you have the conversation of should we fire Mario Cristobal, I don't think that's a very realistic conversation. You just won 10 games last year. You have the opportunity to win another 10 this year. And then you couple that with all of the chaos across the sport. You know, obviously Florida's hiring a new head coach. Auburn's hiring a new head coach. LSU's hiring a new head coach. Florida State is probably going to be hiring a new head coach. In my opinion, and this is my take, Mario Cristobal is currently a problem for Miami. I'm willing to let Mario Cristobal continue to try to figure it out because I look at where this program could be trending, especially with all these programs around them trying to rebuild and say having that sustainability seems important in this next couple of years of era of college football. That's my take on it. And we have to talk about the path forward too, right? Miami, 4 more games, Syracuse, NC State at home. Then you go on the road to Virginia Tech. You go on the road to Pitt. Those are 4 teams Miami is comfortably better than. When you start having that, can Miami still make it into the college football playoffs conversation? I don't think it's unrealistic. The frustrating part is it's now out of Miami's hands, right? I don't think Miami controls their own destiny, but what they need to focus on doing is controlling what they can control. And that is going out, playing their best football, and showing not only the college football fan base, but more importantly, the college football playoff committee. This is a playoff team. You can go look like a playoff team the next 4 games because we know that playoff team is in Miami and it puts you in a good spot. And you have that head-to-head win over Notre Dame. We'll see how Miami responds. It's going to be very interesting. Like, how does Miami get their back off the mat? We didn't see them get their back off the mat after losing to Georgia Tech. Can they do that? Can they do that this year in September and November? We'll see. And that's another thing you are looking for when you're trying to evaluate is Mario Cristobal the guy that we want to continue. Yeah, Miami fans are going to continue to support Miami. I know that. I was a Michigan fan. It's not like I stopped rooting for Michigan. But I think we're all very interested to see how this team gets their back off the mat. Mario Cristobal can say it to the media all he wants. I heard what he said in his press conference. It's about showing us on the football field. That's my take on it. Mario Cristobal's got a lot to work on as a head coach, but he also does a lot of good things. Close it out there. It was a little bit more all over the place than I planned. I had a bunch of things in my notepad that I was ready to talk about. Got a little bit off kiltered. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let it fly in the comment section, and we'll talk to y'all later.